okay? CPI is coming out on July 12th. I'm recording this video on July 9th, so it's going to be out in the next few days, okay? Now, the CPI release is absolutely massive. We do know, what do we know? We know that CPI has been falling dramatically for basically about a year now at this point in time. CPI peaked out about a year ago, and inflation's been dropping. Pretty much month after month after month for a long time now at this point in time, okay? Now, there's some folks, really from the bearish side, that believe, CPI is going to spike back up and the stock market's inflation fantasy ends Wednesday, right? You see stuff like this out there, right? Which doesn't really come as a surprise. I mean, a lot of the bears, how do I put this? Okay, a lot of the bears have lost their entire portfolios this year, or a great sum of those portfolios, and they're very desperate, okay? If you don't know, a lot of the bears either obviously short stocks, but a lot of them buy put options. And pretty much every bear out there was expecting the market to absolutely tank in the first half of this year. So a ton of them were buying options that expired in March, that expired in June, that expire this fall. And these folks are losing everything on those put options, essentially, okay? They've either lost their portfolios or they're lost a massive chunk of their portfolio. So they're kind of grasping for straws. So they're hoping CPI comes in massively higher, so then the Fed has to continue to raise a million more times, right? Then the market gets scared about inflation's not going away and those sorts of things, okay? Now, some of these bears are saying it's a fantasy about, the numbers coming down and those sorts of things. I think it's, to be quite frank, it's a fantasy to assume the CPI is going to go back higher, okay, at least anytime soon. Here's the actual situation, okay? Truflation's had us in the twos this entire month, okay? This basically means we're guaranteed to come in with a number that's 3.4% or lower for CPI for this month, okay? Being that truflation's been the twos the entire month. It's just a big question of, is it 3.4, 3.2, 3, 3.1, 2.9? Like, I think that's a big question, okay? Now, not only is it going to be obviously getting very, very close now at this point in time to what the Fed wants CPI to get to, which the Fed wants CPI around 2%, but on top of that, you're getting month after month after month drops and drops and drops and drops, okay? And so the rate of increase of inflation is getting to a much, let's call it a much less, scary number, okay? Now, this matters significantly because the Fed obviously paused rate hikes, but now the thought is they're going to start raising rates again, okay? Now, I can tell you they should not, okay? Especially given that we come in at a 3.4 or a lower number. Why do you want to keep raising rates? Like you got a Fed funds rate of 5% plus right now. You're going to have, let's say we're 3.3 for CPI, okay? And cores coming in pretty good. We got PPI coming down. Everything's going in the right direction. Everything. And we're getting very close to the numbers we need to get to. If CPI comes at 3.3, the Fed wants to get it to 2, we're getting pretty dang close. And you've got a Fed funds rate that's significantly above CPI. So all you need is just a little bit more time to play out here, and next thing you know, you're kind of at your numbers. So for the Fed to raise again, I mean, they can do it. It's no need to do it anymore at this point in time. But we do know the Fed way overdoes it on either side. They either pump way too much money out there, they keep Fed's funds, at way too lower numbers for way too long of a time, or they do it on the flip side, right? But that's not the most important point, okay? Even more important than if the Fed raises a quarter point, because let's be honest, okay, the Fed raising a quarter point or not, does it really move the market that much, especially now that Fed funds is 5% plus? No. The more important thing out of whatever is going to happen here is what Jerome Powell has to say, okay? Jerome Powell has been extremely hawkish, basically meaning, we're going to keep raising, we're going to kill down this inflation. We still got a lot of problems. Basically he's taking the stance of like, don't get excited about inflation. We still got a long way to go, these sorts of things, okay? And kind of scaring everybody to a million more rate hikes. Now, I'll tell you this, okay? If this man raises, let's say we come in, let's say it's a CPI 3.3, okay? If this man raises, the interest rates, right, Fed funds rate, and comes in hawkish, the man should be fired. Absolutely fired. There's no need. If you have a CPI that's coming in and starting to get close to the numbers you need it to get to, and you then go ahead and decide to raise rates when Fed funds rate is massively above whatever CPI is at, and then you do a super hawkish tone, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you got to be kidding me. But we know Powell has made tremendous amount of mistakes, and so could he make another one? Yes, but it would just be foolish, and that would just show me more like the man should be fired, just flat out if he came in and was super hawkish. if he decides, if let's say we got that 3.3 number, whatever, okay, and he decides to raise rates, he better be kind of middle ground there. He doesn't have to be totally dovish, but he better be somewhere in between a hawk and a dove, okay? Somewhere in there. Because the bottom line is, for him to raise rates, when it's clear the correlation, and it's clear as day we're headed to where the Fed needs us to be, and it's like within the next few months, if he raises rates and then comes in hawkish, I'm just like, you're clueless, dude. But we can't put it past him. We know how bad the Fed screwed up. We know how bad he's screwed up already. So he screwed up twice already, right? He screwed up at the end of 2018. Trump scared him, and he was like, oh, crap, I guess I can't raise rates because Trump's after me. Okay, that was a huge screw up on his part. And we know he screwed up, obviously, in continuing to have Fed funds rate in 2021 at these insanely low numbers, with the stock market overheating, with real estate overheating, with everything overheating, and just continued to pump money and just continued to keep Fed funds at nothing and slosh all that free money out there. Could he make a third massive mistake? It's a possibility. But it would just show complete incompetence on his part. But we know he's already made two massive mistakes already. So to make a third, I guess it's a possibility, okay? And I'm insanely excited about Amazon stock for the long term and why it's one of my favorite stocks I've been buying, for the past 6 to 9 months. He said this, okay? He said 90% plus of commerce is still done in physical retail locations, right? And 90% of basically company spend when it comes to kind of IT and whatnot is on premise for kind of servers and all the compute that's needed around that, right? And he says, do you think that's going to flip over the next, 10, 20, 30 years? My opinion is it will, right? Eventually, we're going to have a day when e-commerce is far bigger than the amount of transactions that are going through in physical retail locations, and is going to be an immense amount more in terms of percent, right? And you think about today how big e-commerce is, and yet still a super small percentage of actual transactions going through are actually going on in physical retail locations, right? So that's going to flip over time. And then in terms of move into products like AWS in the cloud, that's going to flip over time for companies. And so when you look at it from both those vectors, the more you start to realize Amazon's still an early days growth story. And I know it's hard to imagine it because Amazon's so big now, $1 trillion plus company, right? And all those sorts of things. But the more you kind of dive down, the more you realize, gosh, this is actually still very early days in Amazon. And very early days for the profitability story around Amazon, right? So, those are just some factors to kind of keep in the back of your mind that I think are valuable if you're trying to assess Amazon stock and whether it's a stock you ever want to own or not own.